The Color of Opportunity, White Privilege and the Myth of Meritocracy in America. Dear family, thanks for stopping by. Now that we have taken on the challenge of walking through the social construct of race and racism, let us now begin to unpack what is known as the invisible backpack, white privilege. It lies at the heart of countless injustices permeating every crevice of our society, and yet it remains largely unseen to those who benefit from it the most. White privilege, the set of unearned advantages and immunities granted to white people, is not an aberration, but a manifestation of a social structure built on superiority. In a nation where the promise of freedom and opportunity is etched in its founding principles, it is a bitter irony that an invisible force undermines the very ideals upon which America was built. As we navigate the complex landscape of race relations, it is important to confront and dissect the nature of white privilege, examining its origins, manifestations, and impacts on our society. To comprehend the extent of racial injustice and embark on an arduous journey toward a more inclusive America, we must first confront and dismantle the deeply rooted force that underpins our collective narrative. We must ask ourselves, can we disentangle the knot of racial oppression while holding true to the value of every person within society? The very origin of this nation, the United States, is steeped in the seizure of indigenous lands and a brutal subjugation of African people through the institution of slavery. This undeniable connection between the nation's rise and the exploitation of people of color, particularly black people, demands that we probe the depths of white privilege and question the foundations upon which our society has been built. The economic legacy of white privilege is perhaps the most tangible and quantifiable. Consider the Homestead Act of 1862, a policy that granted land ownership to white settlers while excluding indigenous peoples and newly emancipated black Americans. The right to own and inherit land, a fundamental prerequisite for wealth and stability, was purposely denied to those who do not fit the white mold. Systemic barriers such as discriminatory housing policies and practices like redlining have historically prevented black Americans from accumulating wealth and accessing opportunities for social mobility. Generations of white Americans have been afforded the opportunity to purchase homes and build equity, while many black families were systematically denied this opportunity. The repercussions of these policies persist today as the wealth gap between white and black families remains remarkably wide. However, the effects of white privilege extend far beyond wealth disparities. As we move through American history, we find a consistent pattern of exclusion and discrimination against black people. For instance, the Jim Crow laws that were enacted during the Reconstruction era solidified a racial hierarchy that gave white Americans legal authority to systematically oppress black people. These laws, although eventually dismantled, were replaced by subtler forms of discrimination, such as the war on drugs and mass incarceration. The United States has long been celebrated as the land of opportunity, a place where hard work and determination can propel one to success. But for who? Beneath the glossy veneer of the American dream lies a deeply ingrained yet often unacknowledged system of privilege and inequality. The legacy of white privilege manifests in the ideals of this country, where the notion of the American dream is predicated upon the belief in the myth of meritocracy. This dream, in fact, is a distorted reality where opportunity, access, and safety are still disproportionately afforded to white people. To be clear, white privilege is not just about the tangible benefits that white people enjoy, but also the intangible sense of belonging and safety they experience in a society that has been tailored to their needs. For marginalized communities, this lack of safety and belonging is a constant reminder of their exclusion from the American narrative. It is important that white Americans confront the discomfort of recognizing their complicity in perpetuating racial injustice and actively work towards dismantling the structures that uphold it. Only then can we begin to heal the deep wounds inflicted upon our nation's soul and create a future where equality and justice are not just empty words, but a living reality for all. Examples of white privilege in education, employment, and law enforcement. Education. White privilege can be observed in the American education system, where white students are more likely to attend well-funded schools in affluent neighborhoods with access to broader range of resources, extracurricular activities, and experienced teachers. On the other hand, black students are more likely to attend underfunded schools in low-income areas where they may face overcrowded classrooms, outdated materials, and a lack of support. Furthermore, white students tend to encounter fewer instances of racial bias or discrimination within the classroom environment, a factor that can adversely affect the academic achievements and emotional well-being of their black peers. Studies reveal that disciplinary actions disproportionately affect black students, limiting their access to quality education. The UNCF reports that black students are nearly twice as likely to receive suspension without educational services compared to their white peers. Additionally, they are almost 4 times as likely to face out-of-school suspensions and 2.3 times more susceptible to school-related arrests or law enforcement referrals. This alarming disparity in treatment highlights the urgent need for change in our educational system. Job opportunities. White folks are often more likely to have access to better job opportunities due to their racial background. This could result from having a more extensive professional network or being perceived as a better fit for a company or position due to unconscious racial bias. White privilege may also manifest in the form of preferential treatment during hiring processes, as studies have shown that resumes with traditionally white-sounding names are more likely to receive callbacks than those with names associated with black people. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2021, the average unemployment rate for white individuals in the U.S. was 4.7%, while the rate for black individuals was 8.9%. Interactions with law enforcement. White privilege is evident in the different experiences white people and black people have with law enforcement. White people are less likely to be stopped, searched, or questioned by the police and are generally afforded the benefit of the doubt in ambiguous situations. When stopped by police, white folks are less likely to fear for their safety or face excessive use of force. In contrast, black people are more likely to be racially profiled, stopped without a cause, and face harsher treatment during encounters with law enforcement. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, the imprisonment rate of black males was 5.7 times the rate of white males. This disparity highlights the privilege of being able to navigate through society without the constant fear of being unfairly targeted due to one's race. Now, take a moment to imagine a marathon where the white runners are giving a head start while the black runners begin farther behind. The race itself is filled with obstacles, but white runners have a clear path, while the black runners face hurdles and barriers that obstruct their progress. This marathon is a metaphor for life in American society, where white privilege affords white folks a head start in the form of generational wealth, access to better education and job opportunities, and a general sense of safety and belonging. On the other hand, black people must work tirelessly to overcome systemic barriers and societal prejudice, struggling to close the gap that white privilege has established. The first step towards creating a more just society is for white people to acknowledge the existence of white privilege and the ways it has helped shape their lives. This requires a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths and recognize that the benefits that they have enjoyed are not solely the result of hard work and determination, but also a product of a system designed to favor them. Now understand that acknowledging white privilege is not an admission of guilt, but rather an act of humility and honesty that paves the way for a meaningful dialogue and action. Once white privilege has been acknowledged, it is important for white people to engage in critical self-reflection. This process involves examining one's biases, prejudice, assumptions, and an understanding of how societal influences have shaped these attitudes. It is crucial to approach this self-reflection with empathy and a genuine desire to learn and grow rather than becoming defensive or dismissive. By understanding how white privilege operates in their lives, white people can begin to challenge their complicity in perpetuating racial inequalities. Self-awareness carries with it responsibility of taking action. For white people, this means utilizing your privilege to advocate for equity on an individual and systemic level through supporting equitable policies and engaging in difficult conversations about race. This work requires a sustained effort to dismantle white privilege. In addition to self-awareness, allyship is a powerful tool in creating a more equitable society. True allyship is an ongoing process of actively standing in solidarity with marginalized communities, centering their voices and challenging systemic injustices through continuous learning and action. It is not a passive or performative act, but a necessary commitment to creating real change. As we conclude this exploration of white privilege, we must not overlook the subtle yet powerful force of implicit bias that permeates our racial landscape. The next installment in the Skin Deep Journal series will explore the concept of implicit bias, unraveling how it reinforces white privilege and perpetuates racial disparities. Recognizing and confronting this invisible opponent is necessary for dismantling prejudiced assumptions and creating a path towards a society that values every individual's worth, regardless of their skin color. So come vibe with me to get a deeper understanding of implicit bias and how to confront it in our lives as we continue our journey toward greater awareness and meaningful change. Thanks again for rocking with me today. I know it wasn't easy, but I hope it was worth your time. Talk to you soon. Much love, Dr. J.